companies need to be driving the innovation as opposed to wait for the consumer to be telling them what to do. Because most of the time the consumers, A, don't care, aren't thinking about it, and what they don't know. They're not subject matter experts.
Craig, thank you for joining us today. At Vitaco, you oversee a number of brands.
Brands are like kids. They need guidance, they need support, they need direction, they need purpose, and they need resource. Now, we've got a vision of empowering healthier lives. That's our vision. So we manufacture about 80% of everything that we sell. We've invested $70 million in manufacturing capabilities in the last 4 years to stay true to that. I mean, if the results didn't come, then people would go, well, this is a stupid strategy. Don't do it. That's 1 + 1 = 3. Great strategy, great culture. That's when you get amazing success. Don't underestimate gut feel. Your gut's your second brain. And if your gut's telling you it's a good idea, I think it's often a good idea.
Craig, thank you for joining us today.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this conversation. We're going to jump straight into it. One of these things that a lot of people talk about, but few define in the same way, is a brand. So for someone like you who's built and led some incredibly iconic brands, what is a brand, really?
Yeah, well, it's the perennial question I think that any marketer tries to answer or gets answered. I think first and foremost, if you're an FMCG company, your brands are your greatest assets. If you don't have brands, then you don't have longevity. Great brands deliver awesome revenues for long, long periods of time, as long as they're nurtured and cared for. From my perspective, a brand is something that generates an emotional response and an emotional reaction from a consumer. Consumers will always say that I've purchased a product or a service or an item because of some very sensible, rational reasons, because they like to think they're rational, but we're all emotional. And really what people buy on is emotion. So a great brand immediately conjures and creates emotion from a consumer, hopefully a positive emotion. And that positive emotion connects that consumer with that brand. And that's what makes that brand something awesome for the long term. If you don't have emotion with your brand, you don't have a brand. That might mean it's still on its pathway to developing itself as a brand, or you have a product in trouble. I can guarantee you that no brand lives for the long term without true emotional instincts that connect it with the consumer. So what is a brand? A thing that creates emotional, positive reaction from the consumer.
Interesting. I studied economics at university and I didn't like it, if I'm honest. One of the problems I had with it was when you were looking at micro and macroeconomic models, it presumed that all consumers were rational, which is not particularly a concrete foundation to build up models of understanding on. How do you know if a brand is triggering emotions in people?
Well, I mean, I guess, research is one of the best ways to do that. And that's that if you're trying to do economic scientific modeling, then research is always going to help you. And that's going to give you, I think, that sort of quantifiable proof points. And I think research is really important. If you are out there asking consumers a bunch of different brands, trust and quality and a bond, if you like, between that brand and yourself, I think that gives you instinctive insights, metrics to say that there is some emotional reaction. But it's pretty hard. I mean, I think in the end, some of it's anecdotal. I give you pretty good examples of that anecdotal feedback that you often get. For example, often our sales rep cars and our account management cars are branded with a brand like Masashi, which was one of our brands. And the people will leave the car on the street and people will leave little notes under the windscreen wiper. And these are literally true. I love your brand.
Really?
Thanks very much. And it's those anecdotal things. Or you mentioned that you might be part of an organization that owns a brand like Masashi, and the guy that you're working with, the tradie that's coming to see you in your home, I love that brand. It's a cool brand. And one of the aspirations we had for Musashi when we relaunched it and evolved it 5 or 6 years ago was to make it a cool brand, a brand that people were wanting to wear, not just to consume, but they wanted to wear a Musashi hat. They wanted to put on a t-shirt that has Musashi on it. When you get that level of connection, that's when you know you've got emotional connection between the consumer and the brand. People are proud to label themselves as a Musashi consumer or a user or an advocate by actually wearing the brand on their body. And that's when you start to really see an emotional connection between your consumers and your brand. And that's when you know you've got longevity potentially for your company.
Yeah. How do you put in place sort of plans, ideas, strategies to build up that emotional connection? Like what are some of the tips or some things that you've seen work well?
You know, the first priority of any brand is to have a clarity of positioning. What is your purpose? What is your unique proposition? Why should consumers stop and even think about you? Why this brand is unique and why this brand has got something that's worthwhile for a consumer to stop and think about. So let's make sure we get that clarity of purpose right. Why exist as a brand? And once you've got that, what you believe to be a right positioning and a right proposition that really connects potentially with a consumer, it's consistency of imagery, consistency of messaging, consistency across all the different channels that consumer may see the product. It might be in a retail shop. It might be online. It might be an ad. It might be all sorts of different vehicles. It might be the time that they interact with the company that owns the brand. Whatever the interaction is between the consumer and the brand, it's consistency that will enable that consumer to ultimately get a point of view about that brand. Consumers aren't wandering around going, I wonder what these brands are going to try and do for me. They fall on the lap of the consumer one way or another. But what we need to do as the brand custodian is to make sure that there's a consistency of messaging, of imagery, of the way the brand is presented. And over time, the consumer goes, I'm getting it now. This is what this brand's about. And I think I like that. But if you're chopping and changing looks, feels, messaging on an annual basis, or a new brand manager comes along and says, I'm going to change the packaging and I'm going to change the advertising, that's fine. But if you're losing the positioning, then you are not creating a brand. So consistency in all vehicles, all avenues, all channels is the hallmark of how you can begin to make a brand that makes sense. If you're inconsistent, you've got no chance.
How do you go about balancing that kind of legacy of a brand with evolution and obviously keeping up with current societal trends and changes?
Yeah, well, if you're not relevant, then you're irrelevant. And if you're irrelevant, then brands will walk away from you and go, you're no longer part of my life. So you need to adapt. I mean, a positioning is pretty sacrosanct, but that doesn't mean to say you can't be agile and you can't move with the consumer's needs and wants. So you need to be tapping in all the time about what are the consumer's views and attitudes. And we're doing research all the time to try and understand where the market's going and probably where the market's going to be in the future and jumping ahead of that and making sure that we are part of that innovation. But you have to be relevant. What you think is appropriate in 1985 is not going to be appropriate in 2025. The credentials of the brand can stay true, but the way that you are presenting it and the relevancy that you are to the consumer has to modify with the consumer journey.
And what does that research look like? Like, what kind of information are you trying to gather, and how do you get it?
Yeah, well, I think that sometimes, Steve Jobs is a pretty good character. He goes, consumers don't know what they want. We'll decide what they want, and then we'll put it in front of them. And then they go, that's a good idea. Who thought an iPad would be successful? They decided that consumers would want this screen that they could take around with them. And then consumers thought, that's good. So part of it has to be your own innovation and your own thinking about where the market's going to go. And then also asking the consumers, what do you want? If you purely rely upon consumer research and go, consumers say we want to have an improved bathroom gel. They probably don't, but you spend all your time on a new bathroom gel. What do you think the consumers' needs are going to be in the future? So you've got to have your own innovative thinking and try to create the future for yourself rather than just let the consumer tell you what to do. So a lot of the time we're trying to skim the market and see what the new innovations are that are coming through the universities and the thought provokers and push that against our brands and what we're trying to do and go, you know what, this is where the market's going to go. And then potentially go back to the consumer and go, we think this is a good idea or we think this is a good innovation. Can you imagine you using that? And is this relevant to your circumstances now? The research can validate what you think is right, but I think often brand managers, companies need to be driving the innovation as opposed to wait for the consumer to be telling them what to do. Because most of the time the consumers, don't care, aren't thinking about it, and what they don't know, they're not subject matter experts. We have to take on a role of innovating and presenting, and hopefully they buy into that.
Yeah. And that means, I mean, if you're innovating and coming up with new things, there are going to be some ideas that fall flat, right?
Innovation is risky. How many products actually succeed versus the number of products that launch? 100 products launch, 1 or 2 survive, 2 or 3 or 4 years. So you got to be prepared to fail fast and then really link onto those things that really make a difference.
Yeah. Can you tell us about a time, a brand that you've been looking after, perhaps an innovation that you've gone to market with that you were really surprised perhaps by the reception?
Yeah, well, I think I go back a long way now. It's probably going to show my age. I was one of the original brand managers on a brand called Codral, which is the most iconic cold and flu product in Australasia, and a campaign called Soldier On, which went through the 80s, the 90s, right up until COVID. And COVID broke one of the most iconic advertising brands ever because people were not going to soldier on through things like COVID. But for the best part of 30 or 40 years, we told consumers, you can get through a cold and the flu with Codral and you can soldier on. Keep you up, keep you going. And then we thought we should do Codral day and night. And there was a lot of people going, we're a product that keeps you going during the day. We're not a product that puts you asleep at night. And that's almost against the whole core proposition of the brand, put you to sleep. We're not a sleeper agent. We're a keep you going agent. But the view was, no, we'll keep you going during the day and you need to have a good night's sleep to enable you to get better and be better and stronger the following day. Anyway, we launched Codral daytime, nighttime, and that became the largest product in the whole category within 24 months of launch.
Yeah.
Loads of people thought it was wrong, fundamentally inappropriate. The commercial success of it proved that not to be the case.
What was it about that made you think it would be successful, kind of in the face of the people who were challenging it?
I think intuitively, most people will buy into the idea if I can get a good night's sleep through a cold, I'm going to be better off the next day. Yeah. And then I can keep going with Codral during the day as well. The intuition, sort of, rather than letting marketing theory and positioning drive it, well, what would the consumer think about that?
Yeah.
If you said to a consumer with a cold, you're going to get a good night's sleep and you're going to be better the next day, I buy into that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Intuition's so important, isn't it? Especially as a leader. I find myself kind of talking about that more and more when we do these podcasts. As a CEO, as a leader, of course you want the data, but the value of being able to listen to your own intuition, and that intuition's not random, it's not luck. That's years and years and years of you absorbing information, seeing thousands and hundreds of thousands of decisions being made, and then your brain's telling you to go a certain way.
Yeah, gut feel. I mean, don't underestimate gut feel. Your gut's your second brain, and if your gut's telling you it's a good idea, I think it's often a good idea. And you're right. Intuition is enhanced by age, experience, failures, successes, and I think often we probably become a little bit too orientated around process, and that's great because it can prove to be highly productive. But if we just rely upon process to generate ideas, it's going to be a bit too formulaic. Intuition and gut feel are powerful forces for leaders. The challenge often is you start to believe it, and you then have to be able to filter that through the organization and sell it to the organization as why your intuitive idea is a good idea, and making sure that multiple functions in the organization follow that. Otherwise, you can be a lone soldier out there all by yourself and no one's with you.
Yeah.
And that can be a lonely place to be and unsuccessful. So, but you trust your gut. It's often your best indicator.
At Vitaco, you oversee a number of brands, and so, some are relatively new to the market, some have an incredible amount of heritage. How do you maintain sort of brand identity and brand quality, I guess, across such a diverse portfolio?
Yeah, well, so we're a leading health and wellness company in Australasia. We're the largest sports nutrition company in Australasia. Brand like Masashi's number one sports brand in the New Zealand Australian marketplace. But we're also one of the largest manufacturers of vitamins in New Zealand and Australia. Healthrees is the number one vitamin in New Zealand and has been around for 121 years. And it has created a iconic positioning of being the health brand for all New Zealanders. It's the original health brand in New Zealand, and I think it's one of the most original health brands in the world. Its purpose was to deliver healthy bread to Aucklanders to help them to be healthier, hence the brand name. And then we've got other brands we've just launched in the last 12 months. Our most recent brand is called Athena. It's the first sports nutrition brand for females, dedicated to females, sports athletes, and females trying to get fit. So it's a range of brands, but we used to have a whole lot more brands than the 4 we have now. We used to have probably 10, and that was a problem because you can't focus on 10 brands at the same time unless you're a very big organization, and we're not a big organization, really. So we made the decision to focus on 4 brands, 2 vitamin brands and 2 sports nutrition brands, and dedicate ourselves to growing those brands to be as strong, as vibrant, and as successful as we can possibly make them. But to do that, you need to be able to have a clarity of purpose on each of those 4 brands, a clarity of positioning for those 4 brands, and understanding about the resources required to develop those brands and to nurture them. And if we're not prepared to nurture 4 brands, then do 3, but make sure that you can do justice to those 4 brands and know that you can give them the love, the resource, the energy, the focus to enable them to be as successful as you possibly can. And you have to be ruthless and discard the brands that are not going to survive. Sell them, get rid of them, delist them, move them on, to enable you to focus your resources on the brands that you believe are the growth drivers for the organization. And we've done that. Fair degree of ruthlessness at one time to remove brands that were no longer fit for purpose, but that freed us up to give ourselves and our resources the opportunity to grow the brands we have done over the last 5 years and to double the size of our business in that period of time.
Yeah. Interesting. Sounds slightly counterintuitive to cut away brands, but then double the size of the business.
Yeah, well, in some ways, it's quite risky. I mean, I remember at the time when we were doing it, some of my own executive were challenging me and going, "Are you sure you want to get rid of these products and these brands? They are generating reasonable income for us. They are generating some profit, and they've been in the organization for quite a long time. Why would you want to do that?" And part of that was gut feel. Part of that was intuition. I think these brands that we will have after we've removed some of these smaller brands will thrive, will excel, has potential to go to a new level of success if we give them the attention, the resources that they deserve. So there was a degree of, this is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on fewer and make them better. And there was a belief that that was going to be the right way to go. And we did that.
And when you and I talked previously, I was fascinated to hear from you how you've managed to harness synergies across the brands to really help propel them each individually. So whether that was particularly on like the manufacturing side. So could you talk to us? So I think this will be helpful for execs, whether they're managing a portfolio of brands or a portfolio of products, even under the same brand. How did you go about creating that operational efficiency that you've managed to achieve?
Yeah, well, as much as we were a multifaceted brand company with many brands, we're also a multifaceted manufacturing organization. So we manufacture about 80% of everything that we sell. We have a very well-developed state-of-the-art manufacturing organization in Auckland, New Zealand. But we're also manufacturing a whole lot of other stuff. We were doing teas because Healtheries has a large tea business. We were extracting green-lip mussel extract and going to green-lip mussel farms in New Zealand and extracting green-lip mussels and crunching them and extracting in a incredibly messy, smelly process, an extract from green-lip mussels. They were not core. We're a health and wellness company focused on developing health and wellness products and brands. So we closed those plants down because they were not core. And then we said we were going to be the best tablet, capsule, powder, and bar manufacturing company in the region. And we then focused on making sure that we could do the best tablets, capsules, powders, and bars, and invested a lot of money. We've invested $70 million in manufacturing capabilities in the last 4 years to stay true to that. And then we were able to go, we've got vitamins here, but the vitamin know-how, the knowledge we've got within our MPD teams can also be applied to our sports nutrition products and our sports nutrition brands. And we were able to then migrate a lot of the insights we've got about them, how to make and deliver the best possible vitamins across into our sports nutrition products. And now you'll see increasing examples of vitamin type products in our sports nutrition range. Equally, powders is a core part of our sports nutrition range with our protein powders, pre-workouts, post-workouts, electrolytes. But more and more consumers are now becoming a little bit fatigued from tablets and capsules, and they're looking now to a powder as a format that they can now consume their vitamins. And it's a better format in many ways because it can be faster absorbed through a powder. And also you can put more ingredients in a powder than you can in a tablet and a capsule. So because we've got great powder manufacturing capabilities and know-how, we're now able to enable that capability to be transferred across to our vitamin products and our vitamin formats. So there's real synergies between the two, which in some ways look quite separate and distinctive: sports, powders, bars, nutrition, and vitamins. But there's true synergy that we are enabling to unlock because of our own capabilities in manufacturing, but also our knowledge and our MPD team's innovation thinking can be pushed across both brands and both categories.
And how do you create that that flow of know-how and information between the brands?
Well, one of the things that we've worked on pretty hard over the last 5 years is creating synergies between all of our functions. Often, and Vitaco, I don't think was any exception, quite functionally orientated. The manufacturing is here, MPD's here, logistics is here, sales is here, marketing is here, all good in their own right, but possibly not working together at the best way possible. We've been able to, I think, assimilate and combine our functions so that they all know what they're doing. One of the ways we started that was that most of our lead team people that reported to me didn't spend a great deal of time with each other. We would have our monthly executive meeting, but outside of that, they were very orientated towards, oh, this is my job, this is my responsibility, I'm getting my head down and get stuck into doing that. But how much time did you speak to your colleagues about what they were doing and what the challenges they were doing? Oh, not much time at all. Well, then we started one-on-ones with each one of our executives. So each executive speaks to every other executive in the organization every month for at least an hour. And they're talking about what's going on in their business, but they're also talking about how I need your manufacturing team to really start to churn out these products a bit faster. Or can we prioritize these things because we're launching into the United States and we need these products on a ship in the next 3 months? How do we prioritize? Now, those sort of conversations meant that we were able to combine and synergize our functions much more effectively. And that then filtered down because each of the functions saw their functional heads working a lot more closely with their colleagues, and that filtered down through all the components of the organization. And now the synergies between the different functions is clear, it's obvious, and it's automatic. It wasn't always like that. Now it's just second nature to have all of these projects and multifunctional projects working effectively and efficiently. But you had to sort of create that. It just didn't happen by hope. It happened because we created the connections, which now give us these synergies, which we're experiencing.
And would you set, so I'm getting a little bit granular here because I've struggled with silos myself, and I'm sure most executives listening will have. Getting leaders to speak to each other is one thing. How do you really then sort of incentivize those relationships to turn into concrete results and culture change?
Oh, look, we're not sitting there giving them bonuses if they have a conversation, if that's what you mean. I think that we're together monthly and we're together quarterly as a group because we're a New Zealand Australian organization. Half our executives in Australia, half's in New Zealand. Once a quarter, once every 4 months, we're in the same room together. Most of the time, you can just see it. You can see that people are connected. You can see there's the banter, the conversation, the comfort between the executives to talk to each other, to call each other out, to challenge each other, to trust each other. You know that when there's that sort of conversation going on and that camaraderie that teamwork's being displayed, you know that they're talking to each other. You know they're having conversations. If there was sort of, I'm not seeing any strong connections or bonds between the individuals and the executive, that's a sign that people are just in their own little world and not connected.
Yeah.
But you can, as the leader, you can see when the team is cooperating and working together. And if you're seeing that there's isolation, then that's your responsibility to address that isolation. But when you see the bonds working well, you know it's happening.
Yeah.
Now, but I'll be touching, and also our people and culture officer. She's also making sure, hey, you guys talking? Are the connections happening? Are the one-on-ones in your diaries? Are you making sure that you have that relationship? Now it's second nature. Now it's just part of the process. But you had to remind and you had to encourage, but you had to observe.
And let's we'll come back to culture again shortly, I think. But I want to talk to you a bit about one brand in particular, Musashi. So this has become a really iconic brand there for you at home. It's growing internationally. It's also a brand that I would imagine you sort of feel very closely for. It's played a key role, I think, in your career and your ascension to the role. So what have been the key decisions around Musashi that really did turn it into this incredible powerhouse of a brand that we see today?
Well, I think we probably need to go back to where it all started. I'm a great believer in product interrogation and brand interrogation. If you've got a long-term brand that's been around for a while, why has it been around that long? What are the secrets of success? What have been the pillars that have made it the success that it's experienced? And Musashi was a brand that was started in Melbourne in the 80s by a couple of Melbourne entrepreneurs. And they read a book called The 5 Circles of Life by Minamoto Musashi, who was a revered samurai warrior out of Japan in the 1880s and the 1890s. Musashi in Japan is like a god, still is today. That book that I referred to, The 5 Circles of Life, is still taught in schools. It's still taught in the military academies in Japan as being one of the essential books you need to understand if you're going to be successful in leadership and cultural way of life. So these two entrepreneurs out of Melbourne read the book, clearly were enamored by its meanings and its messages. And they decided to create a brand that tried to represent those cultural learnings. And they did an incredible job. And over the course of 10 to 15 years, build a brand that was being used by sporting teams as elite as the Chicago Bears, Chicago Bulls out of Chicago, and many other internationally successful sports teams. So they did an amazing job. And it had this sort of underground awareness and respect. The brand was sold to a large, very big multinational food company, and it lost its essence. I think it lost its reason for being. It lost the understanding about why this brand was unique. And we picked the brand up. We, being Vitaco, picked the brand up in about 2015, about 7 or 8 years after it had been sold to this extremely large multinational food company. And it was in bad shape. It was mistreated, hadn't had a lot of love, didn't have a lot of understanding about its reason for being. And because of that, Vitaco bought it for a very, very good price. And then it was pulled into the organization. And when I started in 2018, went to the CEO and said, I think this is potentially our most valuable brand, but it's still not getting the love it deserves. Let's see if we can really make this something. Now, it wasn't in great shape even when we had that conversation back in about 2018. It had just been delisted from Woolworths, which is our largest retail grocery account in Australia. And it was sort of on a decline, doing around about $30 million in revenue, and probably minus 10, minus 15%. And we completely evolved the brand, all the 4 Ps, the price, the product, the promotions, the distribution, created a real sense of purpose for the brand, and took it on a journey which now delivers for us this year, financial year 2025, north of $200 million, and with a growth CAGR over the last 5 years of 30%, if not more. And it's been an incredible learning about how you can resurrect the brand that's got latent potential. And if you look after it and give it the love, and I don't say that loosely, brands need love. Brands are like kids. They need guidance, they need support, they need direction, they need purpose, and they need resource. But if you get that right, they will pay you back for multiple years. As long as you keep on giving the love, the resource, the focus, they will keep on the brand will keep on paying you back for decades. But we completely revolutionized that brand. It was a brand that was seen as being only used by gym junkies, guys that just want to put on kilos and kilos of muscle. But we took it out of the gym. We took it from the gym to the playing field. We took it out of that muscle on your eyebrows mindset to, you can do better if you play any sport at any level with Musashi. And that meant we had to educate a whole new range of consumers on why would I want to use these protein bars and protein powders and pre-workouts? What's in it for me? So we had to educate your everyday athlete on why you will recover faster, you will prepare better, and you'll be a better athlete as a result of using these products. Now, when you talk to a 21-year-old mountain biker or a 24-year-old rugby player or an AFL player or someone playing tennis, they will have on their repertoire generally some sort of protein sports nutrition product as part of their program. If you had asked that same type of person 5 and 7 and 8 years earlier, do you think about using protein as part of your recovery? Yeah, no. Why? It's irrelevant. Why would I do that? Well, now they know that it's appropriate. And we've been on that journey, accelerated that wave, but also the wave has been building that this is a way to help you to be a better athlete. And it doesn't matter whether you're the most professional athlete in the world or you're a weekend warrior doing some great stuff on the sporting field. You will both be better off as a result of using these type of products.
Why do you think those consumer preferences have changed so much in the last sort of 5 to 10 years? Because no doubt they have. You can, like you said before, you can look at it anecdotally, or you can look at the data. Health and wellness is a booming sector. So where do you think that change came from?
I think that there's never one answer to that. I could sit here and go, "Oh, we're the reason," and that's not true. We have been part of the awakening of consumers understanding about how protein and nutrition can help you perform better. But the science is the most important thing. You can't just say it works or it's better. You need the science to prove it. And invariably, the professional sporting teams, particularly out of America, because they're always the leading edge, but leading edge scientists out of America and then across other parts of the world have been talking more and more over the last 5 to 10 years how nutrition is better, is going to help you, not just in terms of sport, but you're going to be better off as a human being if you have a good nutritional basis for your life. And so there's been this wave of awareness about nutrition being a critical part of health and well-being. Now, in the case of sport, it's just fundamental. You will not be able to recover. You will not be able to excel if you don't have a great nutritional basis to build from and great sleep. They're the sort of two fundamental blocks of success. Lots and lots of sleep and really good nutrition. So there's been a growing awareness about this based on science. And then that wave has been building. And then I think brands like Masashi has helped to accelerate that wave to another level of awareness and understanding and growth.
Yeah, completely. So the awareness builds through science, and then it's having brands that can kind of make these products accessible, right, to people. That's where you come in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing I think that I learned when I came into Vitaco about Masashi. I played loads of sport, but I never in my time playing sport really thought about protein as a part of my repertoire. And even I was ignorant even when I started working for the company. So I asked one of our product managers, why should I use the product and when and how? And his response even then was, well, if you don't know that, you're probably not smart enough to use our products. And I went, whoa, that's the problem. We have to make it easy for the consumer to work out when and why and how I should use these products.
Yeah.
And that's when we created our pillars of pre-workouts, recovery, fuel. Use simple words to describe when and how to use the products. Because it's all very well to have science, but if you can't convert that science into relatively lay terms and easy to understand concepts, consumers will still not buy into it because they just don't, I don't have enough time to work it all out.
Yeah.
Make it easy for me. And that was the other thing we said, we'll make it easy for you to work out which product, when and how to help you to be better off with your sports successes.
Going to sort of just zigzag here back into the culture conversation that we were sort of touching on before. There was a line you said to me previously. It's certainly not your original statement. It's one that's very common, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. We talked a bit about how you kind of get different leaders talking to each other, but how have you gone about building a culture at Vitaco that's driving this high performance that we're now sort of seeing?
Yeah, look, I do believe, I think it was Peter Drucker who said that in the 70s, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture, I think, is a core fundamental success factor. And I don't just mean for business, for sporting teams, for any organization or group or community. If you have a great culture, you're 50 to 60% of the way to being able to succeed on whatever your endeavors are. I think our culture is unique, and I'll give you a couple of reasons to justify that in a moment. But it all seeds from, I think, having a clarity of vision or a why. If you don't have a why for your organization, why do people come to work at Vitaco? Why do they do what they do? What's the ultimate outcome from what we do? If there's not easy, compelling answer to that why or that vision, then it's pretty hard to build a culture. Now, we've got a vision of empowering healthier lives. That's our vision.
Mm.
That's our purpose. That's what we do. We develop products and brands and services that will ultimately deliver and empower healthier lives. Now, that's a pretty invigorating, motivating vision. What couldn't be better than to say that people take our products and they're healthier? They're better as a result of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty compelling. So that's our vision, empowering healthier lives. And we have 3 simple, easy to understand values. We care, we plan, and we succeed. And those 3 values are the hallmarks of our organization. And we celebrate those 3 values all the time. Every quarter, we bring out our Amiga Awards, which are awards that are given to people who have represented those values at the highest level. Our peers nominate people, and those peers then justify why this person should be given one of our Amiga Awards for representing our values the best possible way. The lead team selects the winners of the Amiga Awards for We Care, We Plan, and We Succeed in New Zealand and in Australia, and that culminates in the annual awards. And they are considered to be incredibly important recognitions for our business. And those values and that vision are the things that connect us and drive us and commit us as a team and as an organization. And we then measure our culture. It's not just something to go, oh yeah, we've got a good culture. That's it. We have what we call the Vitaco Voice, which is an annual survey, quite lengthy, probably 70 questions, that every person in the organization completes. And that measures a multiple series of constructs: our leadership, our compensation, our development, our learning, our overall culture. And out of that, we get ultimately one number, and that's our engagement number. And that's a number that says to us, are our people engaged in our organization, believing in our vision and our values, and committed to us as an organization to do well as for us to commit to do well for our people? Now, over the last 4 years, we've gone from 70% engagement. Through COVID, we were about 78, 79, 80% engagement. We're now at 87% engagement levels in the last 2 years. I read recently that most Australian companies' engagement levels are between 20 and 30. We've been able to build a really engaged and committed team of 650 people because I believe it's our vision and values ultimately that we live and breathe that have given us that ability to deliver on our vision, believe in our values, and ultimately we're true to those. And that culture has moved its way through the entire organization.
I was fortunate enough to be involved in a conversation recently between a kind of world-leading brand builder, worked for some of the largest kind of ad agencies in the world, and on the other side, it was a chief people officer who'd worked for some of the top organizations in the world. And they were talking about their world. So one was talking about building brands and one was talking about building culture. We very quickly realized the two are not too dissimilar. It's actually very interesting when you start to write down the kind of core tenets of doing one and doing the other. Both need clarity, need to know what the purpose is. They need nurturing. They need love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, great culture without a vision is nothing, and a vision and a strategy without a culture is a joke. So you need to have both. And whilst, I do agree that having a great culture will eat strategy for breakfast. I think if you have a great strategy and a great culture, you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's, I think, that's 1 + 1 = 3. Great strategy, great culture. That's when you get amazing success.
Yeah. And what I really admire from sort of the few conversations we've had is you seem to have this ability to really make things simple and and clear. And it's, yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, the brands you're looking after in the business are performing so well because of that.
I'm a pretty simple guy. So if it's simple and understandable for me, hopefully it's simple and understandable for most other people. Simplicity and consistency, I think, are key leadership traits.
Yeah.
Let's not overcomplicate. And that consistency of messaging is really important. I have opened up every communication, whether it be written or verbal, for 7 years with the same 2 words: "Hi, team." We're a team. And every single time, it's always a team. And every single time I do a presentation, it doesn't matter whether it's to the board of Vitaco or any other presentation to any other group within the organization, the first thing that I show is what we call the Vitaco pyramid. It's the vision, the values, the purpose, and the strategic drivers of our organization. Everybody knows that. Everyone knows that I'll do that. If I don't do that, there's something wrong. But everybody knows our vision, our values, our pyramid, and why we do what we do. And that consistency also gives comfort. We're not chopping and changing. We're not all over the place. We're not zigging and then zagging. We've got clarity of purpose. We've got clarity of why we do what we do, and we excel at doing those things better and better and better, and the results come. I mean, if the results didn't come, then people would go, well, this is a stupid strategy. Don't do it. But the results we are achieving are giving us the confidence that this is the right pathway. And with more confidence comes more knowledge that we can keep on doing this more often. And therefore, it just instills in us the belief that we're on the right pathway. But that's consistency, and to a large degree, it's simplicity as well.
You've, as you outlined for us before, experienced some pretty significant growth over the last few years with the company, which I presume has also meant the team has expanded reasonably quickly.
Yeah, I think 5 years ago, we probably had about 510, 520 people. I think we're now about 650. So we are growing, which is great. And I think that we're also growing the talent pool within the organization. I'm sometimes in awe of the talent that we're attracting over the last 3 or 4 years. And I ask these people, what brings you to Vitaco? You know, you've worked for some of the biggest multinational pharmaceutical, largest FMCG companies in the world. Why would you come and work for Vitaco? And it's always the same answers. Firstly, I'm really attracted by your vision, empowering healthier lives. I'd rather be working for a company that's empowering healthier lives than selling biscuits or black sugary beverages.
Yeah.
That's, to me, a more motivational, and it's also something I can relate to. And probably I'm more proud to say that I work for a company that's empowering healthier lives than selling biscuits. They're also attracted by our success. Brands that are growing. It's pretty tough if you're in organizations that are seeing markets growing at 1 or 2% per annum. And really what your role is to try and eke out another percentage point improvement in profitability whilst revenue is flat or plus 3%. We're growing at 15 and 16% in categories that are growing at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%. That's more invigorating. It's more motivational. It's more energetic to be part of those organizations that are growing at speed. It gives you options and it gives you opportunities to do things because there's more leeway, because there's more growth opportunities. So our empowering healthier lives, our growth trajectory, and our brands are attracting people who are probably what I would not have expected to come along to our organization. But they're in turn having more fun, and they're having more experiences that are giving them more knowledge. So it really is this invigoration of new talent coming in and being part of an organization that's on a growth curve. And more recently, and I think this has been an absolutely outstanding initiative, is We're bringing interns into the organization. They're generally in the last 12 months of their university studies. Incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent people. And they're bringing their energy, their youth, their know-how, their learnings, and injecting that into the organization. And that's just adding another level of capability. And many of those interns are then converting into full-time employees within the organization because they've spent 12 months sussing us out and whether we're a good place to work. And equally, we've spent 12 months sussing them out to say whether they are going to add to the culture and the capability of our organization.
I don't think I've heard a CEO of kind of a major business talk about the importance of interns before.
You know, we've got a highly capable lead team. I think in our second tier managers are fantastic, absolutely wonderful, pushing us around, driving us, challenging us. But this youth is a cool incremental added value, and they are smarter than us. I mean, they are seriously smart people, and I just love their energy, and I think it adds another dimension to our business. And in the old days when I was a young guy, that sort of program wasn't unusual. But I think over the last 20 years, we've lost that almost apprenticeship type of a component to our business,
Mm.
and we're lesser for it. So I think to actually bring this back again has been a really incremental added value to the business, and I believe we're seriously better off because of it.
Yeah, and it's not just bringing them in, it's giving them the respect and to actually listen to the ideas that they have. Because it's one thing to bring in a young person and ask them to do kind of a menial task, but it's another to come in and say, I'm actually interested in what
Uh,
you have to say.
Absolutely. Because they're so smart. I mean, we're injecting AI into our organization now, so we're bringing in some AI pretty much graduates, and they're bringing in speed and know-how and knowledge that we we couldn't do without that. And I know that it's only and literally a couple of these AI guys have only been in the organization for a few weeks, but the speed of which they are able to introduce AI capability into our organization probably would have taken us 6 to 12 months without their know-how, their intuitive know-how that we are now the benefactor of. And let's bring it in, let's take advantage of that. And and they're then part of a fun group, and it's adding their to value to them. If they stay in our organization, that's great. If they don't, their CV is gonna look infinitely more interesting than the person who did not come and work for a company like Masashi, like Vitaco.
You mentioned, obviously, we've talked a lot about interns there, but you also talked about bringing in talent from potentially kind of much larger
Mm,
organizations.
mm.
What have you seen in terms of embedding those people into your culture and your way of doing things? You're not a small company by any means, but you're also not kind of a huge behemoth. What's been the sort of key learnings or challenges you've experienced there?
You don't want people who are gonna come in and disrupt your culture, but you also want people who are gonna bring another level of capability and know-how and knowledge. Um, our culture is strong. Our culture is powerful. So often people will assimilate into our culture, but they will bring with it their knowledge, their intellect, their experiences from other places. And then that's when we get some pretty cool magic coming into the organization. Um, People pick up quickly our culture. I know that when I first came here, it was one of the first things that I noticed was there was this real care factor within the organization. People pick up uh, that vibe in the organization quickly, and they quickly then go, "Okay, I'm comfortable with it, and I like it, and I want to be part of it. But I'm also going to bring my experiences." And we encourage that. It's not like we go, "Hey, just slow down, Tiger. This is the way we do things around here." No, we want to hear what you want to say. And I have a meeting with every new person in the organization within the first 4 weeks of them starting. And one of the things I'll always say to them at the end of the meeting is, "This is the best time for you to make change in our organization. You're seeing the organization through clear, clean, new set of eyes. Ask the question of why are we doing it this way? Encourage and challenge the ways we do things and ask, are there better ways? Or my experiences would suggest there are different ways of doing things. Can we consider that? This is the opportunity to inject new thinking into the organization.
Yeah.
Don't stuff our culture, but bring new capabilities along.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we have, which is a very important, is a no dickhead policy. You can't be a dickhead and work at Vitaco. I tell everybody who comes in the organization, you don't be a dickhead because you won't last.
What's a surefire way in your experience? What's your what sets off your dickhead alarm, let's say?
Someone who walks around the place thinking they're bigger and better than anybody else. No one's better than anybody else. There's a book that I've read a couple of times called Legacy, which is a business book based on the All Blacks culture. And rule number one of the Legacy book is you sweep the sheds. And the analogy there is that when the All Blacks walk into a changing rooms of any stadium in the world, and when they walk out of it at the end of the game, the sheds is clean, if not cleaner, than what it was when they entered that room.
Yeah.
And the people who clean up the room are the senior players. No one is bigger than anybody else. No one's more important than anybody else. No one has got hierarchical superiority over anybody else. And if you wander around thinking you're a little bit special, that ain't part of the gig.
I agree. Something I often look for is perhaps how people would treat other people who, let's say the waiter, if you take someone for lunch.
Yeah.
Are they being kind? Are they saying thank you when the waiter pours the water? A receptionist, let's say, when they walk in to be greeted, are they being as kind and respectful to the person on reception as they are to me who's coming out to meet them, to interview them? I think that's a big show of character.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. No one's more important and no one's any different than anybody else. We're all equal.
And you mentioned before the huge investment you're making into the manufacturing capabilities there in New Zealand. Obviously, with sort of the political climate and economic climate being what it is, I think for any kind of Western culture, country, government, it's kind of music to people's ears to hear companies making that level of investment into their sort of home economies. What was your thinking behind doing the manufacturing in New Zealand, and what do you expect the payback to be from that investment you're making there?
Well, a lot of it was inherited. The two original companies that made Vitaco were both New Zealand companies. One was called Healtheries and the other one was called Nutrilife. So they were two separate vitamin companies, basically. And they were amalgamated about 2007 to make Vitaco. So they were manufacturers of vitamins in the Auckland region originally. So there's always been a manufacturing base to Vitaco for a long time. And then a few years after the merger of the two organizations, a significant decision was made to set up a bar manufacturing line next to where the vitamins were being manufactured. So they were sort of foundational stepping stones of us building a manufacturing capability in New Zealand. That's, I think, been part of the plan from that time, is that we would be in charge of our manufacturing rather than being reliant upon co-mans to do the work for us. And certainly during COVID, that strategy was absolutely validated. We had one day where our manufacturing plant didn't operate through the 2-year COVID period. And that meant that we were able to supply inventory to our retailers without a miss. We literally didn't go out of stock through COVID. Most of our competitors are reliant upon co-manufacturers to produce their product. And that co-man would decide when and how they would make that product. And often those co-mans were severely impacted by COVID closures. And that meant that there were significant out of stocks. we were in charge of our own organization. We had a mantra from the very beginning of COVID of protect our people, protect our business. And that meant that we were able to continue to manufacture, look after our people, and look after our consumers and our customers in equal steps. So that experience only validated that we need to be able to manufacture our own products and rely upon our own devices. In addition, you make more gross profit. As soon as you contract manufacturing, you know there's about a 20% margin that co-man is going to take, which is completely understandable and fine. But that's 20% margin that you're not taking in, and that's 20% profitability opportunity. Now, when you're growing like we have been over the last few years, it's pretty straightforward to do an ROI model on if we were to outsource the contract manufacturing of bars to another company, what's the cost going to be if we continue to grow at the rate we are? Now, we're doing about 40 million bars a year in volume. We project that we're going to be doing 75 to 80 million bars over the next 4 years. Now, if there's a 20% margin that's going to be passed on to a manufacturer that at 40 million bars, it's a lot of money that we are going to forego and pass on to a contract manufacturer. But if we kept that money ourselves, how many years would it take to pay off an investment in a new bar line? About 4 years. Now, that bar line will run for 25 years. So it's going to take us 4 years to pay it off. And then after that, it's sweet improvement in gross profit. When you look at the numbers like that, it continues to make sense to invest in contract in our own manufacturing capabilities. And as simple as that, that's the way we apply our ROIs. And we've spent $70 million in the last 4 or 5 years on on manufacturing investments based on applying a ROI model. And it continues to be the way that we will run our business. 80% of everything we sell, we manufacture. And that's what our aspirations will continue to be.
And is it also true that you'll experience some kind of IP benefits from that in terms of developing products that no one else can?
Yes, and particularly some of our bars. Our high protein bars contain 45 grams of protein. Nowhere else in the world is there any bar that can deliver 45 grams of protein and have it palatable, taste good, and make it an enjoyable experience for the consumer. We've been able to do that for about 15 years because of intellectual knowledge about how you manufacture a bar like that. Loads of companies have tried to copy us for understandable reasons. It's our biggest selling bar. And they haven't been able to do it. We have knowledge and the process of making those bars that enables it to be a good experience for the consumer. And that's something that we are truly privileged to know, and we're not too keen to pass that on for obvious reasons to anybody else.
And just talk to us a bit quickly as well about what does the future look like from an international expansion point of view? We've talked a lot about the home markets there in New Zealand, Australia. What are you thinking globally?
We've done very well in New Zealand and Australia. We've got about a 30% share of the sports nutrition category in New Zealand and Australia, and we've got a large share of the vitamin categories in New Zealand and Australia as well. But you're always looking for new growth opportunities, and international expansion is clearly part of that planning for us. We launched in the United States with Masashi in August of last year, so August 2024. That's showing really encouraging green shoots of success. And it was certainly helped back in November last year, where a well-regarded sports nutrition podcaster described Masashi as the Mercedes-Benz of sports nutrition in America. And there was an immediate jump in our sales. We're selling only on Amazon at the moment, but we will expand that channels of sales next year. And we believe that the United States, for us, will be a tremendous growth opportunity. It's a huge market, but equally incredibly competitive, very noisy,
Mhm.
and you have to have something special to succeed. So far, we believe that we've got something special, and there's more innovative marketing and product development plans that we've got for next year that gives us cause to be quietly confident that we can expand into the US market and achieve something that's pretty special. We've also launched into the Middle East through Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi, and UAE with Musashi. And the reason for that is the Middle East will become more and more a sporting capital of the world. We're already seeing it, and it will only get more significant. And if we are to be a global sports brand, we need to be where the global sports are taking place. And that's where the Middle East is a very important strategic territory for us. And we will expand into all of those marketplaces throughout the Middle East in the coming months, but we're already started a good distribution pathway through there. And we're looking at other markets now, but we don't want to be too many markets too quickly because you can't do justice to the ones you've already introduced into. So it's going to be a planned process. While we will always look after our foundational markets of New Zealand and Australia, North America, the Middle East, and then some other markets will be where we'll take Musashi. And we are also taking Healtheries, our leading vitamin brand, into other international markets, first off the Middle East as well.
Fantastic. We actually had one of our guests. We had the pleasure of speaking to a CEO of a gym chain. He just relocated to Saudi Arabia from North America because of this exact trend, and it was fascinating to hear how that industry is growing quickly. And obviously, half of the population had previously been excluded from that industry, and women now they're female-only gym chains popping up all across the kingdom. So.
It's an exciting region. I mean, I go there a lot. It's vibrant, it's energetic, the people are amazing. Health and wellness have not really been categories that have been important in the Middle East, but there are some serious health issues there. 15 to 20% of Saudi people are either diabetic or on the verge of. There's a diabetic wave coming through a lot of the Middle East. The politicians, the leaders of those countries are aware of that. So they're also really encouraging exercise and fitness and nutritional programs to help the populations of these regions become healthier. And you're right, gyms are now a really it's a cool place to hang out, literally, and also because it's just a place where people are interacting. So it's exciting, and as soon as people start to do exercise, the next thing they start thinking about is what they're putting in their mouth to help them to be better at exercise or to help them to improve their overall health. And that's where we step in and be part of that next wave of growth that's going to take place through the Middle East.
Fantastic. Just as we start to come towards the end here, I just want to fire some rapid answer questions at you, if I may. See how quick you are on your feet.
Okay.
See if you've still got it. One leadership habit that you swear by.
Consistency and transparency. I tell it the way it is, and it doesn't matter whether it's the highest people in the organization or the people who do all the work in the organization. Transparency and consistency of messaging.
What's your favorite brand besides the ones you look after?
Mont Blanc.
Interesting. Why is that?
I love the consistency of that brand. And I don't know why, but I always aspired when I was a younger person to have a Mont Blanc pen. I love that little white dot on the top. But I have been so impressed by the consistency, the elegance, the quality, and the positioning that brand has continued to express for probably the best part of, in my experience, 40 years. And there's something that, I was talking about emotional connections between a consumer and a brand. For whatever reason, I connect emotionally with that brand.
I have a nice story about Mont Blanc as well, actually. So as part of my progression within the CEO magazine, I went out to Singapore for a few years. We launched the brand and the business there. And I spent just about 18 months, close to 2 years, sort of growing the team there from scratch, set them up, and then I was going to move on and kind of let them continue to grow the business. And yeah, one of my big kind of drivers for taking that step was I wanted to be able to save enough money to buy my first property. And the group, anyway, as I was leaving, they got me a gift, and it was a Mont Blanc pen with my name on it. And that was the pen that I signed the contract for the property for in in Sweden. So yeah, really
Special
nice.
memory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
special memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that pen, I only bring that out when it's kind of like a major moment. I'm gonna sign something.
Right. So that's an emotional connection there.
Yeah.
You get emotional about thinking about the moments you're going to use that brand, and that's where brands are magical.
Yeah. A book that shaped your thinking.
I'll two, and I've mentioned one already, but it shows my age. But Rees and Trout were two of the leading marketing experts back in the 80s and the 90s, and they wrote a book called The Seven Immutable Laws of Marketing. And then one of them, I can't remember whether it was Rees or Trout, then wrote another book called Focus a few years after that. And I read that book a long time ago, but it never left me in terms of the simplicity of going, your brand needs to be focused to really have a chance of success. And if you focus that brand on one thing and keep going and making that successful, you will be successful with that brand. But as soon as you start to spread that brand over too many places and too many territories and too many categories, it loses its reason for being and the consumer will reject it. But that focus has sort of then taken me through even to what we talked about earlier today about focusing on a few brands, focusing on a few manufacturing capabilities. Be good at fewer things, but be outstandingly good at them. So this idea of focus is really something that resonates with me. And the other book that I mentioned earlier, Legacy, which is this book that I've read at least twice about the principles that the All Blacks apply to their culture and their success. And they are the most successful sporting team globally for 100 years. You don't get that by luck. But what are the business practices that can be applied to everyday business that come out of the learnings of the most successful sporting team in the history of sport? And and things like cleaning the shed, no dickheads, they're all the policies of the All Blacks. And they are things that I really think are important for business as well.
Fantastic. And last two questions. And this is a closing tradition, so we're asking these to all the guests. What's one thing you've changed your mind about recently?
6 months ago, I wasn't sure how AI would apply and how it could really make a difference to business. Today, I see it as being the most fundamentally important thing that we can bring into our organizations. And I know it's going to improve productivity. I know it's going to improve speed of decision making and improving decision making. And as long as it's well managed and doesn't take over, but augments good thinking, good questions, and care about the way we use it, I think AI is just a massive input onto the potential success of organizations. And I didn't really get it, or I didn't really believe it probably last year or the year before.
That's sounds like another episode waiting to waiting to happen there potentially.
Yeah, well, we're on the journey.
And finally, so that's one thing you have changed your mind about. What's one thing you've not changed your mind about, and a belief that you want to share with others to help them?
You can't be a good leader, you can't be a good manager if you're not a healthy, well person. Your own health and your own wellness and your own fitness are the foundation blocks from which you can build a clarity of thinking, a capability of connecting, and being a good person. If you are not fit and well, you cannot be a fit and well person or a fit and well leader. You've got to give yourself time for exercise, for sleep, for the opportunity to recover, eat well. I mean, everyone says it, but it's such a truth. And the other part of it, from my point of view, is it's where I get stress relief. If I don't do exercise, 5 or 6 times a week, I get cranky
Mm.
and I don't get. I'm not the best person I can be. I know it's time consuming. I know it's difficult. I know we're busy, but give yourself the chance to look after yourself, and you'll be better off as a partner, as a manager, as a leader, as a colleague, and you'll be better off for yourself. Look after yourself.
On that note, Craig, thank you. Thank you very much for today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And yeah, good luck. I've placed my order for the 45-gram protein bars, so I'm eagerly waiting their arrival. And thank you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's been a fun time talking to you. Thanks so much.
And there we have it. Craig Kearney, the CEO of Vitaco. What a phenomenal discussion from one of the world's premier brand builders. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Even more importantly, if you know somebody who could benefit from the wisdom that Craig shared with us today, please share the episode. I'm David Jepson. See you again next time for CEO Behind the Scenes.